And welcome back. We are live in Sioux Falls at Summit League Media Day once again. Jay Elson, joined by Greg Stemen, and now head coach of the ORU women, Misti Cussen. And Misti, coming in, it's always exciting at the beginning of the season because there's so much that's unknown and there's so many reasons to have optimism at this point of the season. So Can you just talk about how things are looking to this point? I know it's early and nothing's been determined, and from our pre-TV conversation, It sounds like your feelings on all this could be very different by the end of this week even.
Right, we're amazing right now. We are unbelievable. We have our first scrimmage coming up in about 3 or 4 days, and we were just kind of giggling, saying we could have a different conversation here in about 5 days. But we're definitely excited to have feel like we can kind of go a good 10, maybe 11 deep this year. I think our guard depth is going to be a lot better, especially we were kind of behind, losing about 3 or 4 perimeter players prior to the season last year. Of course, we've graduated 2 huge components for ourselves, in Faith Iham and Maria Martinez. So it would have been great to have had the guard depth to go along with those 2 special forwards. But at the same time, I think that the forward replacements that we're finding ourselves with right now just give us a different look. So I think it's going to be a different team than what we've played the last couple of seasons with here in the Summit League. And that's always, change is good, a lot of times. And we always find that as coaches, everybody is replaceable at some point or another. So
you mentioned Faith Iham, Maria Martinez, both of those players, all Summit League contributors a season ago, create a tremendous void for you, no doubt. Is there a plan in place, or do you think you have a plan in place in terms of how to fill that gap?
I think one of the things that we really liked with both of those girls, we stretched the floor a lot in order to kind of find some isolation situations with them in the past. And Faith at 5'9", jump tip for us for 4 years, so that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what kind of athlete we had in Faith. And I may never coach another, that was just that athletic and that special. And Maria too, just both very good as far as their pace of play when we've had them in isolated situations. I think that what we'll find now, though, is that one of the things that kind of came a little more predictable with both of those girls is they weren't really 3-point shooting threats. And I think that'll be one of the things that we'll have a little bit more to go to this year, with being able to stretch the floor even a little bit more in that particular position, to where it won't be as much isolation from 8 foot out or kind of with the back to a basket, but being able to kind of square up and create a little bit more driving opportunity with the lane being open. So again, it'll just be different. It'll be different, but I like the personnel that we have filling in for them right now.
You talked about your depth on the perimeter and how you feel comfortable with that. Maya Mayberry, how important is she to making things go? And then also the unfortunate injury that happened to Martinez down the stretch, it allowed Brotons, another sophomore, to get some extended minutes. How important are Mayberry and Brotons in your development as a team?
I think those are great questions. I think that Maya, Maya's a little bit of a sleeper in that she's highly skilled. She's a great finisher when she gets to the rim, and she can she's the player that gets you a quiet 20, when she's on and when she's having a good game. I think that Maya will play a huge role for us this year as well. She won't come in as an unknown freshman, so it'll be interesting to see how she handles that and hopefully avoid a sophomore slump and being a known name now to other league members. I think Montse in that 5 position, she really is carrying herself like an upperclassman right now. I think it's exciting for us to look back and see she played behind both Maria and Faith over the last 2 years as she came in and developed. I think she's probably in the best shape that she's been in. I think that we can use her a lot in similar ways that we've used Maria the last couple of seasons, and I think she's ready to handle that now. I think she came to us as a 17-year-old college freshman, so she was a little young anyway, and so just getting a couple of years under her belt, I think that's going to really pay dividends for us this year.
I want to go back to Mayberry for a second because 13 points per game as a freshman, Summit League all newcomer, but it's a little bit unique experience for her this year in that her dad, Lee, has now been added to your staff. Can you talk about the decision to bring him in and how he's going to help you?
Well, when we had a staff opening this summer, we lost Janae Inman, who'd been with me for 5 years, and her husband got transferred with his job. And so when we had the opportunity to bring someone in, Lee was my only phone call. He was my only phone call. And the timing, it was a blessing the way the timing worked out. Their family was on their way back from Arkansas to move back to Tulsa. He was a little undecided about what he was going to do. And Lee has a little bit of a resume. He knows his way around a basketball court. We tease him all the time because when our women's basketball staff is together and he puts a hand out, hi Lee Mayberry, a lot of men hold his hand a little too long, you know, and kind of make that eye contact. And oh yeah. And so anyway, we tease him a lot. But Lee coached all of his daughters as they were young growing up. So them being on the floor together isn't unusual. It started with Talia, his oldest, who played at the University of Tulsa. Of course, we had Kaylin at ORU in navy and gold, and now we've got Maya. But it just there were no rocky places at all. You know, Lee doesn't mind getting a piece of Maya every now and then, and she receives it well. So it's been a very comfortable dynamic from the very beginning.
Well, that's it. For those who don't know, Lee Mayberry is the Lee Mayberry you've probably heard of. 7 seasons in the NBA. He's a University of Arkansas Hall of Famer. So very accomplished basketball guy, and certainly a good addition to any coaching staff.
Sure.
But especially yours, because you're the one that has him. The other key returner that I want to bring up was a different circumstance, and that was Lakota Beatty. Obviously, some personal tragedy for her last year with the death of her sister. Can you talk about how she's handled, she's been away from the game for so long. Right. How is she in terms of getting back up to speed with things, both personally and just from a playing standpoint?
Well, and I would even just go back a little bit historically. At this time last year, we were kind of reeling because we were 4 months from losing Ashley as well, who we lost in June, I believe, of 2017. And so Lakota's presence coming back, I think it's not only a great healing opportunity for her personally and for her family as she closes out her college career, finishes her grad degree and everything, but it's really good closure and moving forward for our program as well. And that's one of the things that I look back at last season, and we talked a little bit about the injury that happened with Maria towards the end of season, and we weren't really who we were coming into conference tournament as a result of just a fluke situation. But considering where we started last season and the way that our girls really overcame all through just the entire year last year, I was a proud coach, all the way through last year. But now I think we get to be in a situation to where Lakota's going to be ready, I think, from day one, which is really a surprise to me as a head coach. I really felt like the amount of time that she was just out of commission in every sense possible, just from grief and just from coping with the loss of her sister. I really thought it might take her a little longer to begin to contribute to us again. She's a bit of a walking miracle right now, and just that presence on our team brings a lot to us this year. Things that we think are hard sometimes as coaches and basketball players, they're pretty small, and I think our girls have an appreciation for that.
Certainly great to hear. We certainly wish her the best going forward this season. But Misty, as we look at the broader picture here, your program has never been one to shy away from playing some difficult non-conference teams to get yourself ready for the Summit League. I think a lot of coaches take that approach, but it seems especially true at Oral Roberts, both on the women's and the men's side. So can you talk about what you've placed in front of your team this year and how you think that will prepare you for what's certainly going to be another difficult run through the Summit League?
Sure. We'll open at Iowa this year, and we got to go up there 2 years ago, and I was really happy with what we did offensively there, but we had maybe one of our worst defensive performances in the last couple of years when we were at Iowa. So I'm looking forward to kind of see how we turn that around. We'll be at Kansas. We've got Arkansas on the schedule again this year, which has happened for the last 4 or 5 years. Oklahoma State again this year, and then some good regional teams also that I think are going to be challenges and former postseason tournament teams as well. So it'll be a tough non-conference schedule, but absolutely. I mean, we want to be challenged early and have weaknesses exposed early too before Summit League play.
What about your team gives you confidence that, last year you come in at the 5 seed, you get into the semis of the conference tournament. Obviously, getting into that top 3 in the Summit League, it hasn't been an easy thing to do. What about this team gives you some confidence that, we've got some of the pieces and the components in place that it takes to get some of those quality road wins to finish maybe a little higher in the Summit League?
We have some amazing coaches across the league on the women's side, and that's one of the things that we had a scheduling meeting last night, and I'm looking around, I'm just thinking of the quality of coaches that are around these tables on the women's side, and I think our conference RPI has shown that in the last several years. One of the things I think, Greg, probably our most important thing is we're just going to be a mentally tougher team. And I don't mean to shy away from X's and O's and things that you try to do to bring about the things that your team does best, but just knowing some of the growth that's happened in some of our returning players and just who they are now versus a year ago when they were really wide-eyed and they're kind of behind the 8 ball because of the tragedy in the summer. I'm just excited to see just the competitive spirit and the toughness that they seem to be showing already, and that goes a long way because we're definitely a league that, especially with the travel the way it is, some of the wins are just grinds. You just got to grind them out in order to get them, regardless of what team you are in this league. And so I'm looking forward, because I think that's going to be those situations where maybe we find ourselves in a 50-50 moment in a fourth quarter. I think the return on those opportunities is going to be a lot better for us.
Well, Misty, you've handled our questions exceptionally well, but they're not the toughest that you're going to receive. We reached out to social media to see what fans wanted to ask you, and so let's send it over now to Elena Lancer for the first of those questions for you.
Hey, Coach, good to see you. Yeah, a couple tough questions from the fans. First question, how many players do you usually like to have in your rotation come conference time?
Well, let's say the last 2 seasons, due to some injuries, the players I've gotten to have in my rotation has been about 7.5. Ideally, I think 10 to 11, and that's actually a little high, but just that means you're healthy also. Sure. And so having the opportunity by the time you get to conference in January and February to have your health and to be able to kind of put up with some little tweaks and some nicks and bruises here and there and not miss a beat. So I think in a perfect world, we're looking at a double-digit rotation.
And of the newcomers, who can fans expect to see step in right away and make just adjustments and just improvements to the team?
Well, we'll have Lakota Brown back, and she's not really a newcomer, but even the one season that we had her, she was dealing with some back issues, actually had a discectomy at the end of her first season that she played for us, so that is much improved. I think we're also going to see a lot of contribution from Riley Torrey, who is a forward from us that redshirted last season after transferring, and I think Riley will be in our starting lineup at the very beginning this year and make a big impact on the floor for us.
Do you expect the Summit League, on the women's side, it's been, South Dakota State and South Dakota have been very, very good for a long time, and there's been a Western Illinois team that's been very good. You guys have some really good seasons along the way as well. We're running out of time here, but I just want to get your overall thoughts in the league as we inch closer to the start of this season. Seems to be uber competitive, especially at the top half once again, as it has become known to be.
Right. We always say that a high tide raises all ships, and that's one of the things that we've always talked about. I think that has started with Aaron and what he's done at South Dakota State, and the challenge for the rest of us that got put out, and then what happened with South Dakota that's continued to carry forward with Dawn coming in and continuing to move that program forward. I think JD is masterful. He's an analytics guy. He loves to kind of play. He would say this, so I'm not blowing up JD, but he plays the geek side, coaching a lot with analytics, but it works for him. And I think just the opportunity to be in that realm with those coaches, I think that's something that we can do. And then I think at the same time, you're probably finding yourself in a postseason opportunity when you're doing that on a regular basis, regardless of which program it is in the Summit League.
All right, Misty. Well, thanks again so much for your time.
Sure.
Welcome to Sioux Falls, even though it's going to be a short trip. We'll definitely be seeing you down the road, but appreciate your time as always. Certainly want to wish you the best of luck going forward this season.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, that is Misti Cussen, head coach of the ORU women. Stay tuned. We're going to talk Golden Eagle men's basketball when we come back. We are live in Sioux Falls at the Summit League Media Day.